Social Security disability hearings often focus on what Social Security Administration calls exertional impairments or exertional limitations. Exertional limitations are the things we would normally think of as being more physical in nature, just a quick summary, like sit, stand, walk, push, pull, lift and carry, things of that type. And I wanted to talk just a little bit today about particularly the sit, stand, and walk. Normally, I ask my clients the following question. I say, well, I don't ask the claimant. I ask the claimant and the vocational expert. I tell them to assume that we have a hypothetical person who can sit for about 30 minutes and then stand for about 20 minutes, but then more importantly needs to walk away from the workplace for about 5 minutes in order to find relief from pain and kind of get themselves back together, so to speak, and begin to regain their focus. That kind of question to the vocational expert also carries with it limitations with regard to a person's ability to maintain concentration and attention. As a general rule, we have Social Security Regulation SSR 85-15, which indicates that if a person is unable to maintain attention for at least 2-hour segments, they should be approved generally as for their disability. But there are some jobs that, particularly, if you think in terms of a general office job, obviously you can sit, stand whenever you basically want to. But on the other hand, if we are looking at the kinds of jobs that vocational experts generally offer in a disability hearing, we're talking, for example, unskilled types of jobs that are particularly structured so that a person cannot ordinarily sit or stand whenever they want to. And so when we have situations like that, we'll look for the medically determined impairments, the medical diagnoses and related that your treating sources have delineated throughout your medical records, and then we'll apply those to the questions that are utilized, that I utilize in terms of representing you in your disability hearing. And as I said, I typically use the one that I indicated, and I'm repeating now for emphasis. I'll ask, well, assume that a person can sit for 30 minutes, stand for 20, and then has to walk away from the workplace for at least 5 minutes. Most of the administrative law judges insist that we specify the time intervals involved with that, so that's the reason I do it in that fashion. And then with regard to lifting, sorry, I have a tendency to forget to turn that cell phone off when I'm recording. And typically with regard to lifting, but not only lifting, but lifting and carrying, we all tend to use a gallon of milk because we all know a gallon of milk weighs about 8 pounds, and that we also don't need to define Social Security's what they call vocational terminology, and by that, we particularly need to be aware of what is meant by occasionally. Often clients use the word occasional, and sometimes your doctors will as well. But Social Security has a very definitive definition for occasional, and occasional can be from 0 to up to 1/3 of an 8-hour workday. And so that can become, if you calculate it, just a little more than 2 hours, not all at once, but spread out over the 8-hour workday. So I'll also ask you, the claimant, and I'll ask the vocational expert if a person is limited to lifting and carrying less than a gallon of milk. We'll also need to ask whether or not the claimant needs to use both hands to lift a gallon of milk. Pardon me. Sorry about that. Because we find that if we have and can document in your medical records that you have limitations with regard to reaching, handling, and fingering. Reaching is really defined in the Dictionary of Occupational Titles, which is what the Social Security Administration uses as reaching, using the hands and arms to reach in any direction. And so at some point we'll ask you whether or not you're able to reach overhead for, say, up to a little more than 2 hours spread out over the 8-hour workday. And all of these questions, it's best not to answer them with yes or no answers. Usually my clients say no, but more importantly, if you're going to say no, you need to be able to have a reason as to why you're saying no. That's what the decision maker, the administrative law judge, is looking for. So be prepared to have those reasons as to why you can't sit, stand, walk for significant periods of time, and also why you're not able to reach, handle, and finger for significant periods of time. Significant being more than, as I defined, more than occasionally, which, repeating for the sake of clarification and emphasis, is a little more than 2 hours spread out over that 8-hour workday, and again 5 days a week, because all of Social Security's regulations turn on full-time employment, not part-time work. And so then if we can find rather in your medical records limitations with regard to reaching, handling, and fingering, then I will ask the vocational expert, well, what happens, what's the impact on the jobs that you offered that you're saying this person can still do, if that person is limited to occasional reaching, handling, and fingering. And I've already defined occasional, so, and it's not what people tend to say in a hearing. I'm talking in terms of what the Social Security Administration defines as occasional, because then the next step is what they call frequent, and by Social Security's vocational terminology, frequent is up to 2/3 of an 8-hour workday. So that gives you an idea, from 0 to up to 2/3 of the 8-hour workday. So with that, I'll stop with this particular session, but I hope that gives you useful insight. Let me know if it does or it doesn't. Questions are always welcome. I can always be reached at 800-900-4440 or at hermanadvantage@gmail.com. Herman spelled HERMANN, advantage@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it.